Hi, I'm Matthew Doctoroff. Thank you for interviewing with me. Can you please state your full name?
Leslie Brown.
Where are you originally from and where do you live right now?
I grew up in Huntington Woods, Michigan, and I live here still.
And how old were you when in 2009?
In 2009, so that was 8 years ago, so I would have been about what did I say, 8 years ago? So 37.
How did you discover that our nation was facing a severe economic situation?
So this was back in 2007.
Seven. Yeah.
That's the time I think you were talking about, because before that I wasn't born, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is when gas prices were really, really high. People were out of jobs. We were being very conscious about how we were spending our money. We thought about where we were driving, and we're just watching our investments.
What were like your emotions when you first learned about this?
So, a lot of different things. So, one is we thought about our kids' college. And one of the things we did years before that, when 9/11 happened, is we changed how we were investing in their college. So that was at least good. We were happy about that because we felt like our investment was stable because we took it out of the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was interesting because, I guess not interesting, but it was scary and sad because you saw all these houses
Yeah.
in up north Michigan. Like you just heard that people were going into foreclosures,
Like being evicted.
Mm-hmm. So it was very sad seeing that happen, and just wondering how things were going to turn around. And especially my husband was in the automotive, but he was at Ford, which was one of the companies that never took like the bailout. But it made for like unsure times. We were never worried that we wouldn't have a job, but it was more about what was happening around us.
So, do you recall any like major differences from like before this and after this, like financially?
Financially for us, we were okay because we still had our jobs, and so our bonuses were affected. I mean, so that had some impact, but other than that, I think we were some of the fortunate people that, even being in automotive, like I said, at Ford, it was okay because we were still employed. But around us, I mean, a lot of things, you could definitely see people affected and got laid off, and a lot of people looking for work, and it was definitely a hard time for a lot of people.
So you talk about like people around you being affected. Did you have any like friends or family that like were like being affected by this, and like how did that impact you?
So I think it was around then that like my sister had moved to Atlanta, and her lifestyle was a little bit different, and she was trying to change careers and stuff, but it was tough for her down there. So we helped her financially. So we didn't want her to not have money to eat and such, so we were able to help her out and get her back on her feet again. So that would be one example. I remember someone down the street from us, I remember just feeling sad that when he said, "How's it going?" one day, and he's just like, "Oh, I got laid off." So it's you just didn't know, like anyone around you, what their situation was. So it was tough
So
time.
so going to like turning over to like government. What do you think of President George W. Bush and like the Congress's reaction to this like major event?
So, I mean, I think there was a lot of debate. I'm trying to remember back, but I mean, obviously there was so much debate on like the bailout of the automotive companies. I have like a lot of mixed reviews on that, because that was a big thing, that just looking at our state, not the whole country. Affected the whole country, but our state particularly, that had the biggest impact. And so the bailout, in some sense, was good because it was solving for the mistakes of the automotive, their bad planning, right? It was a big part of their bad planning with pensions and such like that, that, you know, that they needed that help or they were going to go under. And if they went under, things would have gotten a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, what kind of message does that send when the government's saving these companies that didn't do things so right? So I have really mixed reviews. I think, I mean, in the end, I think it all worked out, but I could argue that one either way. You know, I'm glad that it all bounced back and that things were handled well. But it's a mixed review, and a lot of people had, you know, strong opinions one way or another. But then you look at like Ford on that example, and they were able to do it on their own. So, and how did they get rewarded? They didn't. Nothing happened with them. So.
So this was like a time period where like we switched presidents, you know, because it was like 2007 to 2009 or like December.
Yeah.
So do you think, or if you remember, like President Barack Obama's, do you think that like he helped us in a way?
I don't know if it necessarily, you know, coming in. I think a lot of everything was back on its feet from during already in motion. So I think he just came in with his different agenda. It wasn't like he was solving for what had already happened. I think that's what Bush already kind of solved for it. And then Obama came in, he had his agenda, which a big part was the healthcare and trying to help, you know, give everyone healthcare, which during that time, you know, tough scenario. So I think that the wheels were already in motion. I think he just picked up and where the wheels were already turning.
Mm-hmm. So now that we're in 2017, like what or your suggestions, I guess, to like prevent this from happening again?
Well, I think there was a lot of things. I mean, I think a big thing it was really eye-opening to me is watching the movie The Big Short. And if you haven't seen it,
I have not.
You should go see it. It's a little complicated, but it's a good movie. It talks about exactly what was going to happen with the housing market, and then how they thought the whole housing market was going to collapse because of how the loans were being given out, and they were giving out loans with not looking at anyone's credit, and it became just this business of more loans the better. And I actually watched my sister go through that. So she was did not have any savings, and she was going to be allowed to buy a house. And luckily, my husband and I stopped it. And I remember we yelled at the realtor, like, how could you give her a house in this kind of, and then the realtor was like, that's my job. She got approved, and my job's to give her a house. And we're like, but she can't afford it. And that's what happened to so many people, you know, across the country that we didn't talk about that led to all this. So I would hope that the system's in place now for the way, and I think they're in place now, that we would never go back to the way that loans were being given out without the proper credit background and employment and all that. So that's one. Hopefully that's in place. It's very interesting. It was very eye-opening seeing that. And then two, I think, you know, is the big businesses of the world, like the automotive. I think they've changed the way they're doing things. I think pensions at a lot of places got changed around because a big part of how their biggest expense was paying for people that didn't work there anymore. And it's a nice perk to retain employees, but at the same time, that was being really costly for all these companies. So now it's pretty hard in companies these days to actually get a pension. So I think in the big business world, I think that change was a positive change that was, you know, switched out. Now, listen, I'm fortunate because my husband is one of the last in getting one of those pensions. Fingers crossed. But in the future, that's what's helping, you know, the GM, Chrysler, they don't do that anymore. So I think that's a big effect. And then, you know, I think the other thing we just have to always watch for is when you talk about business and the world of it, is just, you know, there's been other things big things falling in, like if you haven't heard about like Enron and illegal things going on, or the New York investor that had a whole pyramid scheme going on. And I think those are the things that we continue because it affects so many people, because it spirals out so fast. And I think as long as there's the right checks and balances and we monitor. Now, in the world we're living in right now, I'm not sure we have all those checks and balances with our government. So that makes it a little bit scary. But, knock on wood, we won't end up back there. But you're probably learning that there's ebbs and flows of always with the economy. And for every high, there's going to be a low.
Okay, so last question. What lessons should be learned from the Great Recession?
The Great Recession. The lessons learned is, I guess it's as for us, the people, for me just sitting here and everyday people is, I think we all just need to be smart and plan appropriately and live within your means. I think that during that time, a lot of people are living way beyond their means just because they could. When you get credit and you get credit cards, doesn't mean that you should go spend all your money, and those are the people that suffered the most. So when we started off this interview, you said, how did it affect me?
Yeah.
Luckily, it didn't affect me so much because it was smart planning. And now it was also good that our jobs weren't affected, but even if they were, we were still living within our means, we would have been okay. So I think that's what everyone should think about is if you want to enjoy life, but you want to enjoy life within the means you can afford.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.